You're listening to the Lawyers with Purpose Practice Success Podcast, hosted by Lisa Rozier, featuring attorney Dave Zampano, along with frequent guests. Whether you're a seasoned estate planning attorney, an attorney looking to add estate planning and elder law to your existing list of practice areas, or you're just starting out, this podcast will give you a solid plan for success. Listen now as Dave and his guests share their personal journeys to practice success and the insights they learned along the way.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lawyers with Purpose Practice Success Podcast. I'm Lisa Rozier, joined today with Dave Zampano and special guest, attorney Paul Hamilton from Hamilton Estate Planning out of Valdosta. I always say that wrong.
Valdosta, Georgia.
Valdosta. There we go, Valdosta, Georgia. I got stuck. Sorry, Valdosta, Georgia. Thank you, guys. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, Paul, welcome. We love
It's good to be here.
It's
good to be joining y'all, and it's okay. The automated systems call it Valdosta, and they say all kinds of different ways, but it's we typically pronounce it Valdosta, Georgia. We're about 20 minutes north of the Georgia-Florida line.
Oh, nice. So you must be having some beautiful weather right now compared to us upstate New Yorkers that are in zero weather.
Yeah, if the high today is about 55 or 60, I think, and that's an actually pretty chilly day for us.
Oh, there you go.
But you know, I spent some time up there. I was stationed at Fort Drum, New York, an hour north of Syracuse.
Okay.
I used to always fly out of Syracuse to go home, and we'd lift off out of Syracuse with snowfall, and I'd land in sunny Atlanta or sunny Valdosta, and the temperature would be 65, 70 degrees, and the trees would still be green. So I've done my time in upstate New York.
Yeah. So Paul, I
never thought of it that way, doing our time.
Well, I was in the Army as well. So that's
I was going to say this.
Thank you for your service, Paul. That's great. You got that. I love your Southern drawl, because, you know, anyone who hears Southerners, you know, you just think of kindness and gentle, right? But
yes,
there's a pit bull, right?
Oh, yes.
So, Paul, welcome to the Practice Success Podcast. You know, we love to hear our audience, our lawyers, trying to understand, how do I get successful? So, you know, I'd love to hear your story. So you're in the military, you know, when you got to law school, out of law school, how you ended up in estate planning, and and then what second part, maybe we'll just talk about, you know, where have you seen your greatest growth and success come from? So,
okay, wonderful. Well, I was actually serving in the Army. I was one of those guys. I'd gone to school and gone to college, and you know, typical progression is law school out of college, but I was just so tired of school. And I decided to go active duty Army, and was commissioned as a medical service corps officer into the Army. And I thought that meant I would be in a clinic or a hospital doing hospital administration type work, because while I was in college, I was in the Georgia National Guard as an infantryman, a grunt, crawl in the mud kind of guy. And I was looking forward to my time as a medical service corps officer, where I would be in a nice clinic. But I got attached to the 10th Mountain Division in Fort Drum, New York, in a light infantry battalion. So I was right back in the same place. But I loved the camaraderie. I loved everything. But I was in Bosnia, and I called home and I said, send me the LSAT book so I can study to take the law school admissions test. Took that shortly after getting back from Bosnia, and after my service commitment, entered law school at Mercer University in Macon, Georgia. Spent 3 wonderful years going to law school. And then I came home to Nashville, Georgia, which is about 30 miles north of Valdosta, my hometown, and opened my practice, which I would not have done if it hadn't been for my mother, who was a paralegal, who kind of held my hand. And I had some other attorney mentors.
You know, I'm going to pause you right there. That is a powerful statement. So 2 parts. Number one is your mother held your hand, but the second one was she was a paralegal and showed you how to do it. Wow, that's a real powerful statement, because isn't that true? I could tell my success, it's been great paraprofessionals and office staff that have really propelled the office. So you started that way with right out of law school.
Yes, which they tell you not to do, right? They say, oh, you're going to commit malpractice, and you can never do that. But I just couldn't listen to the naysayers. And and of course, nobody's perfect. So did I make a mistake? Of course, along the way, lawyers make mistakes, but you learn from those. And but I drew on her knowledge. She had been a paralegal at that point by about 10 to 15 years, maybe. And she taught me that if you don't know something, like she didn't know something starting out as a paralegal, she wasn't professionally trained as a paralegal. She did the on-the-job training. And she would, one of her things was doing real estate and abstracting of title. And she would go into a courthouse and find the knowledgeable people and say, please give me an education. How do I do this? So
ask.
Yeah, don't be afraid to ask. So I've never been one to be afraid to rely on other people to help me through that. And my mother was my biggest champion. She's just recently retired. But yeah, that was great. And
so how many years ago was that, Paul?
17 years ago.
So 17 years ago. So walk us through real quick your practice in 17 years in the next couple of minutes.
Yeah.
You started out, what happened, and how'd you end up where you are? How'd you get from there to here?
Yeah. Okay. So 17 years ago, opened Paul W. Hamilton LLC in Nashville, Georgia, and it had been my dream. And at that point, I didn't know what kind of law I'd practice. It was called threshold law, right? You do the law that crosses the threshold of the door, what comes in the door. My mom's expertise had been in real estate, so I found myself doing a lot of real estate closings. Then I found myself in the needs of a small town of about 6,000 people, a largely rural agricultural area. Hey, I got arrested for DUI. I need help with that. Hey, I got arrested for this. That criminal defense started to be a big area. And then family law, divorces. I didn't even take a domestic relations class in law school, but here I was doing divorces. And then I was doing litigation divorces. Georgia is one of, I think, 2 states where you can have a trial by jury on a divorce. So I found myself doing jury trials, and some of them, high level jury trials with divorce cases, doctors who were getting divorced, they could pay the bills good. So, that kind of stuff. And I really enjoyed the litigation. I wanted to be a litigator. And I did that, finding myself primarily doing high level criminal defense at the federal and state level, and doing high level family law litigation. But as anybody that's done that type of law will tell you, that can suck the soul out of your being.
We call them burnt out litigators. It's about 10 years in, 10 years into the practice, we find.
And about 4 or 5 years ago, I said, there's got to be a better way. And I'd done some probate work, of course, preparing simple wills, doing simple probates. But I've always been drawn to older people, always connected well with older people, explored elder law. And I started the process of turning my law practice, from a litigation practice to an estate planning elder law practice. And last year was the first year that that no cases were anything but that probate law and estate planning law. And to get started and educate myself, I joined Elder Council and Wealth Council, and got a lot of great training, did the boot camp with Elder Council. And then I learned about you guys at Lawyers with Purpose. And last year was my first full year with you guys. And it also just happened to be my highest revenue year in 17 years of practicing law. Yeah. So
what was the shift? And again, not really about those organizations versus ours, but when you're obviously in good organizations, they're well trained, they train you well. What made you shift from those type of organizations to an organization? What was the differentiator that was in your current organization that wasn't in your previous?
The systems approach to things that comes. It's like everything packaged together in one. Both the legal technical was very important to me, and that's where I really feel like that I have support.
So the legal knowledge.
Yes. Yeah. I felt like I could, it's great. I mean, there was great training and stuff in some of those others, but connecting the training with the practical application was a game changer with Lawyers with Purpose, in my opinion. And so just knowing what the processes are, and being able to connect to people through the stories that we tell and that we share, and having fun with it, and everything. And what I love the most is I love educating. I teach a political science class at our local regional university here. I like being up in front of people. I like talking, and I like sharing knowledge. And I feel like the way that we do it with our Lawyers with Purpose program is we just educate people. And I tell people, they say, "Oh, how much is that going to cost?" I was like, "Well, that's not going to cost you anything. I want you to know. I want to give you ideas that might send up red flags for you." But I love this practice area versus my prior life as an attorney.
I think you've raised a great distinction. One of the distinctions that was always made here, a lot of law firms, would you say, in the estate planning industry do seminars. We call them workshops.
Yes.
But they do a seminar workshop. And I think one of the key distinctions, and this is subtle, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, because I tell people this and they don't understand it. I'm going to say it to you, and I'd love you to give me the perspective of what you would have said maybe when you came in versus what you say now a year later, or a little more than a year later. Here's what I've always said. All law firms that I've ever dealt with that do seminars or workshops have always viewed them as part of their sales system. Here, we've always said that the workshop is the first part of the planning system, meaning that how can someone know what they want to plan for if they don't know what there is to plan for? So we actually use it as the first step of the estate planning process to help educate them so that they then could come in and say, okay, look, we shared all these things with you. Which ones resonated with you? You said, I think you used the word like what a buzzword, something that pops out and shows, but like what resonated with you? What are the things that are important to you? And then that starts our conversations. So how would you react to that as that being the first part of the planning process rather than a marketing part of the process?
Yeah, because my mother and me as well don't like the salesy stuff, right?
Right.
So, and she's still very anti-salesy.
We don't sell, we're lawyers.
Yeah, we don't sell this. And I find my ability to get people to sign up for it with this mindset that this is the first step in our process, that completely changed my buy-in on how I present it to my clients or to potential clients. It's like, look, this is our first step. This is where I'm going to explain to you the difference between wills, trust, and estates and probate, and give you all these pieces and tell some funny stories as well. Things that may happen to you and may not happen to you, but at least you'll come into our one-on-one meeting armed with that knowledge. And, and I think it's also educating to motivate.
Educate to motivate.
Educate to motivate. And I think when people hear that, like, oh yeah, that's a concern. I haven't thought about that. I haven't thought about, if Richard remarries, his new spouse getting my IRA, and I want that to go to kids. And so, yes, because I have to have buy-in. I have to believe it in my bones in order to present it to someone else. I'm not a very good poker player. So to me, knowing that I'm educating, that I'm helping people for free, that even if they take this information and they hold it and they don't use us or whatever, I feel glad and I'm happy that I've been able to impart something, because down the road, maybe they'll bump into somebody. Hey, I know a guy, and here's who, told us about this, you should go. So I believe it all, what goes around comes around. I'm a firm believer in karma and goodwill. And also I couch it as a civic responsibility. I've had the opportunity to get a great education, and now I can impart that to my community members, friends, and partners in the community.
So Paul, how do you get people into your workshops so you can educate it? Do you have synergistic relationships? Is it the kind of scenario that you just said? somebody came and talked with me, and maybe they weren't a client, but it was the best form of advertising because it was a referral.
Well, we try to do a little bit of everything, right? I don't know if there's one, silver arrow in the quiver that you use.
Right.
We do what in Lawyers with Purpose we call, RMS, referral marketing system, where we make a point of meeting with someone and learning about their business and educating them about ours. We also make it a point. I'm a member of our business networking international, our local BNI, our chamber. And I post something every day on social media outlets just to stay top of mind and let people know I've got this. And we send out a newsletter once a week where people can sign up for this. And I'm going on the radio every Friday morning at 8:00 on both of our stations. I do one station one Friday and the other station the next Friday. So I don't think it's I think there's no one thing. It's you got, different touch points, but making sure you got something, because if you're not out there planting seeds, Candace, our friend Candace says, RMS is like brushing your teeth. You do it all the time. You don't stop doing it. So you don't get so busy with your work that you put RMS off. You keep building those relationships every day, and that pays dividends.
And it does. And brand consistency, top of mind awareness, and you're doing it in.
Paul, let me ask you this question about the theme that is coming out of this conversation for me. And Lisa, I'm going to ask for a couple extra minutes because I think there's some really cool stuff here. You came out of the gate, initial questions, with the concept of process and systems. And I think the average lawyer listening to this podcast really doesn't understand what that means, right? They have these concepts, and you even said as one of the differentiators for you. So as you think about your civic duty and speaking and doing workshops, that alone isn't it, is it? I mean, you could do that all day long, but if you don't have a system and process to plug that into,
right?
So even your marketing, you said you do RMS, you do BNI, you do these things. Where do systems and processes play in? What if you're talking to someone listening to this podcast and they have their own idea of what system or process is? How would you describe that differentiator when you have a system and process? How you have one, and what makes it different?
I think what's made it different is just, for instance, this morning, I knew when I sat down in this chair at 9:30 that I was going to spend the next hour, because I have it allocated every week that's my time to plan for my RMS for the next week. And it's also time to plan for my BNI. I kind of group those together because they're, so I've got a BNI aspect, which is, a little,
it's
a
a form of RMS.
Yeah, it's a different form of RMS, but I called one of my buddies that said, hey, I want to learn more about estate planning. He's a banker. I called him up and said, hey, what you doing next week? Tuesday at 1:00. Let's do this. And I got it on the calendar. So I know it's being.
But then what? But let me really capture this. So you got them. Anyone does it. So what's the next step in the process? So when you get them at lunch, what's going to happen at 1:00?
Well, I'm gonna go through and I have a number of questions that I'm going to ask them. I'm going to be very intentional about asking them. Tell me, I want to know about you. What makes you tick? What you're looking for? How I can help you? And then on the backside of that, I'm like, where can we partner? What kind of synergy? And we've had a lot of talk about, and I'm listening to Phil and Joe's RMS thing that they're doing once a month right now. And we were talking about it earlier this week. Sometimes sometimes you connect with someone and sometimes you don't. Yeah. So that's a great part of that. But yeah, I know, because there is a systemized sheet that has been proven to work. And whenever I deviate from the rules,
let's call it from the process.
Yeah, from the process, the chances of success tend to drop off, because there's a reason when you interview people, if it's a couple trying to make a decision, that you give them a few minutes by themselves. Right. So Phil asked me, what'd you do different? It's like, I didn't give them a chance to talk by themselves. He goes, you deviated from the system. So it's highly, I don't want to say highly technical, but it's, systematized. So, and
I call it strategic, right? It's a strategic process. And one of the things that's powerful is people say, I need a system and process. I think one of the things that's important, I always recommend you could build them yourself or you could buy them, right? One of the powerful things is if people have already done it and laid the tracks and have refined, right? Isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Well, I can tell you, Dave, I read EMyth Revisited early on in my legal career, and I'm like, this is great. I just need to systematize my office. I just need to put systems in so I do it this way every time, and I'm consistent and deliver measurables. The problem is, as a young lawyer starting out, even, then I'm like 15 years later, I'm like, I still don't have the systems, and Lawyers with Purpose has helped me, take what's been done and make it work for me. And
well, you just said a buzzword, Paul, with, I don't know if you know this, but I read the EMyth in 1999.
Okay.
And it changed my life and it changed your life. And I'll tell you how. After I read the book, I said, this is not a book you read. This is a book you live. And I started literally quarter by quarter saying, okay, I got to create a process for how we answer the phone. Next, I got to create a process for how I meet with the client in the initial meeting. I got to create a process for how I meet with them in the next meeting. So the system, the complex, meaning comprehensive system we have now that are trusted, tried, and true, are 21 years of me building systems and processes. So like I always tell people, you could do it yourself, sure. But again, the EMyth is not a book to read. It's a book to read and live. And what we always do here is we say, right, Paul, if you do deviate, do it in a certain way where you could track and measure the impact. Like you said, you deviated in a couple areas and you saw a worse impact. We do have some members that may try and deviate in one area and get an increase. So then we analyze that, then we give it to other members. And if it works, then we incorporate it into the system. So we have an always growing system and process that's always staying relevant to the times, right? So when COVID hit, right, it's much easier to tweak certain parts of a system than trying to have to recreate everything from scratch. And so I think that's the power of systems. They're plug and play. And I think they do enable some freedom. Like you said, you did test and go off the rails a couple of times. And I'm sure maybe there's once or twice, maybe it's successful. And then that comes back. And that's how we're always making and improving. And that's what the community does, right?
Yes.
The community of attorneys all using the same processes. So they're able to share their successes and challenges. And how many times on the listserv have you seen someone go, hey, I'm really struggling with X, and then 30 people, have you done this, and this, and it's like, yeah, and then you're laughing, right? So
I know.
So
I love our listserv.
Yeah.
And that's such a valuable thing too, is just knowing all of us on there in common purpose toward helping our people. And it just it's just a great community, and I'm just happy to be part of it. It's really been great.
Kind of in a wrap, as you look, you said you've had your best year ever in 21.
Yes.
How's 22 looking?
It's looking good. It's looking good, and I have some fabulous opportunities in 22. Some really jam up people. Some that I won't say their name on this podcast. I'll do that with you privately. But yes, I have an ability to really grow my team, and I'm very excited about that. And I think some market space opening up here as well. So I'm excited.
That's awesome. So in closing, Paul, those attorneys listening to Practice Success Podcast, what's your words of wisdom? Again, I know you have a 17-year journey, but it seems like your biggest journey has been the last couple of years. What's your advice to someone listening to have practice success?
Don't be afraid to change. I think about that because I had some skeptics about changing practice areas. And so if someone's, tinkering in a number of other areas, but really wants to jump into estate planning and elder law, don't be afraid to do it. Because I had some naysayers, my dear mother being one of them. And it's like, we just can't do that. You can't just do one thing. And I'm like, yes, I can.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah.
can. But I think never stop learning, and also not being afraid to change, and system.
Yeah.
I think those are the broad things I'd want to share.
Sounds like open, curious, and adaptable. 3 of our core values. Yeah.
There you go.
Cool. Well, Paul, thank you so much. I love talking to members. I love talking to successful lawyers. I love sharing. I think your insights today reminded and excited me about my own past. So thank you for opening that portal for me today. Lisa, anything for you before you close?
No, I just have to say for our listeners, this is my first time officially meeting Paul, and I have just loved listening to this conversation, your story. It's just, it's wonderful. And I look forward to additional conversations, and I wish you the best.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to Taper in person.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Can't wait. Well, for our listeners out there, thank you for joining us today. And as always, you can go to lawyerswithpurpose.com to listen to additional episodes of the Practice.
Oh, Lisa, can I make a comment?
Oh yeah.
If
Sure.
somebody's listening and they're not a member and they're successful, we want you on our podcast too. Reach out. We'd love to hear what's making you successful.
Yep. Absolutely. Just reach out. Use the contact form on our site. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Practice Success Podcast. Visit www.lawyerswithpurpose.com/podcast to listen to other episodes and to subscribe. We'll see you next time.